we do have a theist, Mark. I wonder if I've talked to Mark before. I know I've talked.
This sounds
to
really
Mark
familiar.
before. What up there, Mark? How you doing?
How you doing? No, I've never called in before, but very thrilled.
Okay.
to be on the show.
All
for a long time. How you guys doing?
That's awesome.
Well, I was raised Catholic, and
my condolences.
The thought I had when I called, that's a whole show there to talk about that. But my brother-in-law passed away recently, and I asked him one time, "Were you religious?" Because these are things you discuss when someone's terminally ill, I guess. It's an uncomfortable situation too. But he said something like, "Christianity has been around for so long." Because I was like, "Do you believe any of this?" And he's like, "Why would it subsist for so long and be popular after 2,000 years?" I thought that was an interesting question.
Hinduism's been around for longer.
Yeah, I know where. Yeah.
So
what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, for me, I mean, religion and religious thinking has been a fairly predominant sort of belief system throughout the ages. And I mean, Christianity took hold pretty hard, there in the early AD time period or early CE time period. And, they took over whole empires and everything like that as far as being the predominant religion. So, I mean, Christianity had a lot of help from empires and countries and everything like that were looking to adhere to, a religion, because religion was, very important to the daily lives of everybody. And so, I mean, I guess with the amount of help that religion has had through the ages and the utility that it used to provide to people, I'm not surprised that religion has always been a persistent thing, regardless of whether or not it's Christianity or a different religion. It seems to a lot of people generally hold that it has some kind of utility to think beyond, this reality into the supernatural, and that's been the predominant view all throughout history. So, I guess I don't understand why. I guess I'm questioning why would you question this? That's my question for you. But I don't know, Forrest, what do you think?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think. Well, no, actually, I want to hear Mark's response first, because I'm taking some notes over here on some thoughts. So I want to hear what Mark has to say, and then I've got something completely different.
Yeah, I just like you guys. I'm pretty rational thinker and well read, and I'm kind of turned towards skepticism a little bit. A lot of it's just from watching your show, but and I've been watching for quite a while. And I appreciate your intellectual honesty and how you guys are patient with callers and stuff like that. But I don't know. It just kind of my brother-in-law mentioned this. He believed it because he says he couldn't understand how could it not be true, because it's been around for so long and it's so popular. I live in Florida, and it's just there's a Baptist church on every corner in the state. So I don't know. I just thought that was it. I didn't really thought about it that way.
Yeah. Well, it was popular for a long time to think that God was in control of the seasons and the rain cycle, or water cycle rather. But we've advanced our knowledge, and we understand how God isn't required for any of those things. We understand how seasons are affected by the tilt of the earth and the orbit that we're in around our local star, and we understand how the water cycle works because of the exchange of energies, the energy that happens with water molecules, and how that changes state. So we understand from a fundamental level how God isn't needed in those things. So just because we believe something for a long time, that doesn't mean that we should continue to believe it.
Right. That makes sense.
I also think,
I
think the biggest thing that's really important to think about here is, we mentioned Hinduism, and we mentioned all these, the thing that I think is most important when we're talking about gods is that what kind of god or gods a culture has I don't know which argument I don't, I'm not trained in this area, so I don't know which direction you'd want to take the argument. I imagine you could take it from both directions, but like the god or gods are reflective of the values and needs of the society, and the behaviors of the society are reflective of the characteristics of the gods. So like I said, I don't know which direction you want to start at, but like if you have a society that is highly pluralistic and multicultural and relies on trade and things, thinking about ancient Greece, thinking about Rome, thinking about the Norse, where you have a lot of trade, especially with like Muslim countries and things. You have gods that are polytheistic. You have lots and lots of gods to cover lots and lots of areas of life and lots of different professions. And those gods are very tolerant and very interested in different types of people. And on the other side of that, if you have a very hierarchical and highly socially stratified society, then you have a very dominant and authoritarian and omnipotent and omniscient God. If you have a very hunter-gatherer society, if you have a society that is very connected with nature and doesn't have that separation that we put in between culture and nature, right? So quite as much, then you're going to have a more animistic kind of religion. You're going to see a spirit world that's connected to yours. You're going to have gods that are part of the nature around you, if not nature itself. And that's going to be the thing that's feeding you and the thing that's providing for you. The first gods were the sun, and then hunting, and then fertility, right? And so what we see as this progresses, as society progresses, the big thing that agriculture specifically does, it allows you to have bigger and bigger and bigger societies that you wouldn't be able to sustain otherwise. As you get to this really, really, really big society, it's no longer practical for governments to be able to control that many people in such a detailed way to make the society run as a smooth, clockworky machine. And so you have a god who knows everything now. You have a god that watches you while you sleep and can judge you for your dreams. You have a god that's concerned with morality now, as opposed to another god or gods in a more agrarian or a more trade-focused society that are really not very concerned with what you're doing and who you are. They're just here to help. If you're a blacksmith, you have the blacksmith god, and if there's a storm, you have the storm one. But in these really big societies now, you have this big monotheistic god that's watching you all the time and cares about who you have sex with and cares about whether or not you're stealing and cares about whether or not you're raping and cares about whether or not you're murdering the wrong people. If you murder the right people, it's fine, because then it's just the same thing as a war god in that particular way. And so what it happens is that religion becomes this domestication tool for humans. At a certain point, religion is this collar that you can put around people's necks to tell them, like, hey, I, is your king, can't watch you in your home, but my God can. And he's going to punish you if you conspire against me, because speaking out against me is speaking out against the church, because we have, a state church like England, like Rome, like whatever, and so you can't do that. You're not this. If you go out and steal and are an anarchist and break rules in society, well, then my God's going to punish you. That's a bad thing to do. And so it allows you to put a collar on people's brains and fill them with these everlasting thought stoppers that we deal with on this show. Well, if God isn't punishing people, then why are, there's no justice at all. We need God as this divine, eternal, perfect punishment, watching our people and our children, and then blah, blah, blah. And we need perfect redemption because the society we live in is cruel and unfair and unkind and unjust. And people die on the streets all the time. And despite our best efforts, there's rape and there's murder and there's torture and there's pedophilia and there's all these things. So we need this God that gives us the comfort and the joy. Once we fucking die, we'll be all right. So as long as we're here, we can remain enslaved and be happy about it and not complain about the structure of things, because God's on our side. And God is this act of liberation, even if you don't actually get it. God is this token of peace, even if you don't actually have it. God is nourishment when you are hungry. God is comfort when you are frightened. When you don't actually have these things, you can now have this balm, this calming, this soothing, this prophylactic for all of the things that you wish you could actually say. You have this God that fills in the gaps. And then you look at why it's actually spreading, and you see it's the exact same thing. Because if you can use this God to justify the worst parts of your life, you can use this God to justify all the horrible things you do to everybody else's life as well. manifest destiny, the Crusades, pick your favorite. We need to civilize these savages and teach them about our God, our true one way of living. When you have these dominant hierarchical gods, ethnocentrism is kind of the point, and so it kind of becomes the result as well. And so you have the reason why things like Christianity are so popular and have spread so far, because on the nicest days, you can go out into these communities of people who are struggling for drinking water and food and medicine and simple things like hygiene, mosquito nets, and you can tell them every bit of the worst, most horrific, most terrifying fire and brimstone messaging to scare them into believing whatever the hell you want them to believe, and no more and no less. And it works. It works. It allows for colonialism. It shakes the minds of innocent people to the point where they believe that you have some knowledge that they don't, and they allow you to domesticate them the way that you have domesticated yourselves. But in the more real sense and in the more common sense that we look throughout history, it's genocide. It is forced conversion. It is forcing people by pain of death to join your faith, to walk your walk of life, to be a part of your society. It is boarding schools. It is for reservations at one point or another. It is, I mentioned manifest destiny. It is all these things that we see where we have a long and very well documented history of people going into these communities, indigenous communities, and slaughtering anybody who doesn't fit the bill for their specific interpretation of their specific version of their specific translation of their specific holy book. And so when you have people like your friend who ask, why is religion so popular, or Christianity specifically so popular and so large, and why has it persisted so long? That friend needs to ask themselves, do you think that the spread and persistence of Christianity has more to do with the divinity of the Holy Spirit and the reliability of the message, or do you think it has more to do with the fact that we can literally demonstrate, show in the history books, is not controversial, genocide, slaughter, forced conversions that have persisted for centuries, if not millennia at this point. And now that we have swept the world, bulldozing over all of these other cultures to establish this as the dominant religion, now we can say, well, it's just natural. It's just normal. This is the way people are supposed to be. This is just, look at these people. It totally makes sense that this is what they would do. It's just logical. There has to be a beginning, right? And that's this lovely little God that I have, ignoring the fact that this was the God of fire. This was the God of war. This was the God of slavery. This was the God of all these evils and atrocities for so very long. Now it's this God of logic and peace and kindness and tolerance and love, because it's easy to be and it's convenient to be, and that's how you keep it. That's how you stick it. That's how you make sure that it sticks around for as long as possible, and you can pass that offering plate far and wide. That, Mark, is my answer to your question. What do you think about all that?
You're just saying it's easy and convenient, and that's why it continues to stick around, and it doesn't require people to think critically, right?
I mean, that's one part of it, but that's not nearly the biggest utility. The biggest utility is social control.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. Right. Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. I mean, that's an experience it's so intense. I can't describe. I'm going to write a book about it because it's such a weird perspective if you haven't been raised in that environment, But anyway, I'm kind of leaning towards skepticism, and it's just I have questions, and this was one of them because it was something I thought was.
Well, let me be clear with you, Mark. The skepticism doesn't necessarily mean atheism. Skepticism is a practice that, properly applied, I think will inevitably lead you to atheism. But you should be leaning towards skepticism anyway. You should be checking to see if there's a good reason to believe the things that you believe all the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a journey, But I'm going to let you guys go because I know we've got probably other calls. I appreciate your taking my call, though.
Yeah, my pleasure.
No problem.
Like you said, I love the show. I love that you guys are incredibly patient with callers, So So you should pat yourself on the back for that. You know.
Oh, thank you. That's very
Thank
kind
you,
of
Mark.
But all right, nice to meet you guys, and have a good evening.
All right, take
All
care,
right,
Mark.
you do the
Bye-bye.
same. All right. That was a great call.